Hey guys, this is Tim Starnes from Cinesamples. Whether you've been doing long-distance music collaboration for years or you just began recently, here are some helpful tips for keeping organized and making the process go more smoothly no matter what DAW you or your collaborators use. These are very basic tips for working on music without the visual element. Later, I'll create an additional tutorial on music production for film and television. The topics include folder structure, session setup, file export, and labeling and file sharing. Before I get into it, we know that anyone can use just about any instrument imaginable to make a song. Here are a few cool songwriting instruments from Cinesamples. Cinepiano is so versatile, it's not just an orchestral piano. Piano in blue and keyboard in blue. Then there's Randy's prepared piano and Randy's celeste. Then there's tonal tiki-takis for really interesting percussion, metallurgy, dulcimer and zither, and the kalimba, and Rio grooves. And we got plenty of freebies as well. So check that out on our site. All right, to the folder structure. Let's say your music is a song called Little Blue Marble. Start by creating a new folder called Little Blue Marble. Inside that folder, create two folders. The first one, label it 1 LBM file sharing. LBM, of course, stands for Little Blue Marble. Inside 1 LBM file sharing, create subfolders for each collaborator on the song. From Mark, from Casey, from Steve, and finally a folder from you. We'll call that from Tim for right now. This provides a clear way to see what you've delivered to the others and what others have delivered to the group. Return to the parent Little Blue Marble folder and create another subfolder called 2LBM Pro Tools or 2LBM Logic or whatever your DAW is. This will contain all of your session data. Having the separate file sharing folder keeps your session data going back and forth, separate and organized from the data that's in your sessions. For each subsequent song, no matter what the title of the song, the file sharing folder will always sort to the top if you put a number at the beginning of the folder name. Choose a file sharing method that works for everybody in the group, either Dropbox or WeTransfer, perhaps. There are others. If you use Dropbox, I highly recommend working on a separate volume or a hard drive from your Dropbox drive. Keep your session data on a separate hard drive. Otherwise, if you drag files to and from your Dropbox folder and into your session, they will disappear from your session folder and your collaborators' Dropbox folders. So copy and pasting is the safest method. On Dropbox, create a folder also called Little Blue Marble. Inside that, create the same subfolders for each collaborator that you have in your 1 LBM file sharing folder. Now let's move on to session setup. No matter your DAW, set up your sessions at 24-bit and 48 kilohertz. This is the standard today. This is the most compatible with video creation. Very few people are making CDs anymore, so there's no need for 44.1 kilohertz. It's ironic that Apple prides itself on having the latest and greatest of everything, yet GarageBand will only operate at 44.1 kilohertz. As you begin, you'll set up the meter and tempo. Let's say it's 4/4 at 108 BPM. Reserve bars 1 and 2 for the count-off and begin the song in bar 3. Perhaps you create a rhythm guitar track and a lead vocal track. Now it's time to bounce and label them. I'm using Pro Tools here as an example, but many of the same principles apply to other DAWs. Before you bounce your tracks, let's talk about file naming options. The first option is relatively simple. It begins with an abbreviated song title, followed by the instrument, LVOC for lead vocal, also followed by a V1, which can be incremented for future revisions, and then ending with bar 1, which indicates where to place the WAV file within the tempo meter map. The second option adds a date right after the title, so that it sorts by the date first to reveal the most recent work. The date in this case is 2020, followed by the month 04, followed by the day 10. The third option adds the collaborator's name inside the file name to sort right after the date. These naming conventions are completely up to you and whatever works for your collaboration. Once you've selected a naming option, bounce or consolidate your vocal and guitar tracks separately, each from bar 1 to a bar number past the end of the song. Make sure the consolidate or the bounce is to the grid exactly from bar 1 so others can synchronize accurately. Even if you did not create any MIDI data, export a MIDI file. Label the MIDI track LBM MIDI 44108 BPM bar 1. Even if there's no MIDI data in the track, it lets everyone know the meter, tempo, and the bar number from which you've begun your song. Another option, if you and your collaborators are using Dropbox, is to simply label the parent folder of the song LBM 44108 BPM to indicate the meter and tempo. However, if you do have meter and tempo changes, export a MIDI file and others can import those changes from it. In this case, you can simply label the MIDI file LBM MIDI bar 1. Now time for file sharing. Copy the MIDI file and both WAV files that you created from your DAW session folder into your 1LBM file sharing from Tim folder. Then copy from there into your Dropbox folder of the same name. Make sure you copy and paste, especially if you're on the same volume. On a Mac, you can also hold down Option and drag it to the Dropbox folder. Each collaborator can now download those files and create their own session and begin working. They begin by copying your files from Dropbox into the same folder on their local drive. They create a session in their DAW at 24-bit, 48 kHz. They import the MIDI file. They import the two WAV files and place them both at bar 1. Next, Casey could create a keyboard track, bounce it from bar 1, and label it like this. Then she can copy it into her 1LBM file sharing from Casey folder, and then copy it from there into the same folder on the Dropbox folder. If I want to bring her work into my session, I copy it from Dropbox into my file sharing local folder, and then import that into my session. I can hide and make inactive the bounces and consolidations that I made of the vocal and the guitar tracks. Since her keyboard track is labeled from bar 1, it should line right up. Let's say, for example, I want to revise my lead vocal. I can upload to Dropbox a new file with the V2. Then I can create a folder called _old and then move the old lead vocal track into there to show that it's not intended for use without completely deleting it. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more tips and tricks goodness. I hope at least some of this info has been useful even though you may be a long-distance collaborator.